Arizona Cardinals, 2008 season, 9-7. This wasn't the best regular season, but it was the Cardinals' best run, and it nearly ended in a championship. In 2008, the Arizona Cardinals went just 9-7 in the regular season, barely winning the NFC West. But once the playoffs started, they caught fire. Behind a resurgent Kurt Warner, dominant performances from Larry Fitzgerald, and a surprisingly tough defense, they became the underdog story of the year. Fitzgerald went on one of the greatest postseason runs ever by a wide receiver, racking up 546 yards and 7 touchdowns in 4 games. The Cardinals knocked off the Falcons, Panthers, and Eagles to reach Super Bowl 43, the franchise's first ever. In the Super Bowl, they went toe-to-toe with the Steelers. Down late, Warner and Fitzgerald connected on a 64-yard go-ahead touchdown that felt like the perfect ending. But Pittsburgh answered with a last-minute drive, capped by Santonio Holmes' iconic toe-tap catch in the corner of the end zone. They didn't win the title, but they changed the way people viewed Cardinals football. That 2008 team didn't just overachieve. They gave Arizona its most unforgettable season in modern NFL history. Atlanta Falcons, 2016, 11-5. This was the year everything clicked until it didn't. In 2016, the Atlanta Falcons had the #1 scoring offense in the NFL, with Matt Ryan putting together an MVP season and Julio Jones at the peak of his powers. They averaged 33.8 points per game and steamrolled through the playoffs, dropping 36 on Seattle and 44 on Green Bay to reach Super Bowl 51. Offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan dialed up a perfect system. Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman made up a versatile backfield. The offensive line was dominant, and Ryan threw for 4,944 yards, 38 touchdowns, and just 7 interceptions. Then came the Super Bowl. Atlanta stormed out to a 28-3 lead over the New England Patriots. For 2.5 quarters, it looked like a coronation. But in one of the most painful collapses in sports history, the Falcons gave up 31 unanswered points and lost in overtime. It was devastating, but it was still the most complete team the Falcons have ever had. Explosive, innovative, and just 1 or 2 plays away from immortality. The heartbreak still lingers, but so does the greatness. No Falcons season ever reached those heights or fell from them so sharply. Baltimore Ravens, 2000, 12-4. This wasn't just the Ravens' best season, it was one of the most dominant defensive seasons the NFL has ever seen. In 2000, the Baltimore Ravens finished 12-4, but it wasn't because of a high-powered offense. In fact, they went 5 straight games without scoring a single offensive touchdown midseason, and still made the playoffs comfortably, because their defense was historic. Led by Ray Lewis, the Ravens allowed just 165 points across 16 games, the fewest ever in a 16-game season. They gave up only 970 rushing yards total, forced 49 turnovers, and shut teams down at every level. They didn't bend, and they never broke. In the playoffs, they took it up another notch. They beat the Broncos, Titans, and Raiders while giving up a combined 16 points. And in Super Bowl 35, they smothered the New York Giants, allowing just 152 total yards and scoring a defensive touchdown in a 34-7 rout. Trent Dilfer managed the offense. Jamal Lewis powered the run game, and the defense handled the rest. It was old school, smash-mouth football at its finest. The 2000 Ravens didn't just win the Super Bowl. They left no doubt. No Ravens team, before or since, has ever been more feared. By the way, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed and dropped a like for the algorithm. Buffalo Bills, 1990, 13-3. This was the year the Bills became a juggernaut and launched one of the greatest runs in NFL history. In 1990, Buffalo went 13-3, led the league in scoring, and looked unstoppable on both sides of the ball. Jim Kelly ran the no-huddle K-gun offense with surgical speed, spreading defenses thin and letting his weapons go to work. With Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, and James Lofton, the Bills could beat you any way they wanted. They outscored opponents by 165 points during the regular season, then obliterated the Dolphins and Raiders in the playoffs, including a 51-3 blowout in the AFC Championship game that still stands as one of the most lopsided in postseason history. Then came Super Bowl 25, a classic showdown with the New York Giants. It was a battle of styles, Buffalo's high-octane offense versus the Giants' ball-control defense. The game came down to the final seconds, and with the Bills trailing 20-19, Scott Norwood's 47-yard field goal attempt sailed wide right. It was heartbreak, but it was also the beginning. This season kicked off 4 straight Super Bowl appearances for Buffalo, a stretch of dominance no AFC team has matched since, and while they didn't win it all, the 1990 squad was the most complete, explosive, and balanced team they ever fielded. They were one kick away from football immortality. Carolina Panthers, 2015, 15-1. This wasn't just the Panthers' best season, it was a cultural moment. In 2015, Carolina went 15-1, steamrolled the NFC, and did it all with swagger, smiles, and Superman celebrations. At the center of it all was Cam Newton, who won NFL MVP after throwing for 35 touchdowns, rushing for 10 more, and becoming one of the most electrifying players the league had ever seen. The Panthers had the #1 scoring offense and the #6 scoring defense. They led the league in turnover margin, were nearly unbeatable at home, and won games by an average of 2 touchdowns. But it wasn't just stats, it was the energy. Cam dabbed after touchdowns, the defense fed off the crowd, and every week it felt like Carolina was playing their own brand of football, fast, fearless, and fun. They crushed the Seahawks and Cardinals in the playoffs, punching their ticket to Super Bowl 50. But there, the momentum stopped. Facing a relentless Denver Broncos pass rush, led by Von Miller, the Panthers were held to just 10 points and lost 24-10. It was a frustrating ending, but it didn't take away from the season's magic. For 4 months, the Panthers were untouchable. And for one unforgettable year, Cam Newton was the face of the entire league. No Panthers team before or after has ever reached that level. Chicago Bears, 1985, 15-1. This wasn't just the Bears' best season, it's one of the most iconic teams in NFL history. In 1985, the Chicago Bears finished 15-1 and fielded a defense so dominant, it changed the way football was played. Buddy Ryan's 46 defense attacked from every angle, confusing quarterbacks and overwhelming offensive lines. Led by legends like Mike Singletary, Richard Dent, Dan Hampton, and William the Refrigerator Perry, they allowed just 12.4 points per game and forced 54 turnovers. On offense, they weren't flashy, but they didn't need to be. Walter Payton anchored the ground game, and quarterback Jim McMahon brought leadership and just enough chaos to keep things interesting. Even the team's personality became a storyline. They filmed the Super Bowl Shuffle before the playoffs even started, and they backed it up. In the postseason, the Bears shut out both the Giants and Rams, then crushed the Patriots 46-10 in Super Bowl 20. It was a complete demolition. 7 sacks, 6 turnovers, and a defensive touchdown. No team since has combined dominance, charisma, and intimidation quite like the '85 Bears. They didn't just win the Super Bowl. They became the gold standard for what an all-time great defense looks like. Cincinnati Bengals, 1988, 12-4. This was the season the Bengals came within seconds of winning it all. In 1988, Cincinnati went 12-4 and had the most balanced, explosive offense in franchise history. Quarterback Boomer Esiason won NFL MVP, guiding a no-huddle offense that kept defenses on their heels. With Ickey Woods bulldozing defenses and James Brooks adding versatility out of the backfield, the Bengals were nearly unstoppable. They scored 28 or more points in 10 games, cruised through the AFC, and rode that momentum into the playoffs. After beating the Seahawks and Bills at home, they advanced to Super Bowl 23 to face the San Francisco 49ers. The game was tight the whole way. With just over 3 minutes left, Cincinnati held a 16-13 lead. They were one defensive stop away from their first Super Bowl win. But then came Joe Montana. In one of the most iconic drives in NFL history, Montana led the 49ers 92 yards down the field, hitting John Taylor for the game-winning touchdown with 34 seconds left. It was heartbreak, but it didn't erase the season's brilliance. The 1988 Bengals were fast, physical, and forward-thinking, and even though they came up just short, it remains the most complete team the franchise has ever fielded. Cleveland Browns, 1986, 12-4. This was the closest the Browns have come to a Super Bowl, and the peak of their modern era. In 1986, Cleveland went 12-4 behind breakout quarterback Bernie Kosar, a punishing run game with Kevin Mack and Ernest Biner, and a physical, opportunistic defense. They controlled the AFC Central, won tough road games, and built a team that could win in any weather, especially important in December in Cleveland. Kosar threw for over 3,800 yards, the defense racked up 62 sacks, and Marty Schottenheimer's team played with toughness and discipline every week. They earned the AFC's number one seed, and hosted the New York Jets in the divisional round, a game that went down to the wire. Cleveland pulled off a wild comeback win in double overtime, the longest playoff game since the AFL-NFL merger, and advanced to the AFC Championship game against the Denver Broncos. That set the stage for one of the most infamous moments in franchise history, the drive. With 5:32 left, John Elway led the Broncos 98 yards down the field to tie the game. Denver went on to win in overtime, 23-20, crushing Cleveland's Super Bowl hopes. But even with the heartbreak, 1986 marked the high point of the Browns' Super Bowl-era legacy, a team with star power, grit, and real championship potential. They were one defensive stop away from rewriting history. Dallas Cowboys, 1992, 13-3. This was the beginning of a dynasty and the most important season in modern Cowboys history. In 1992, Dallas went 13-3 under head coach Jimmy Johnson, with a roster that was young, loaded, and built to dominate for years. Quarterback Troy Aikman had fully matured into a franchise leader. Running back Emmitt Smith led the league in rushing touchdowns, and Michael Irvin gave them a true number, one wideout who could win every big moment. But it wasn't just about the stars. The offensive line, led by Larry Allen, Mark Tuinei, and Nate Newton, was already becoming legendary. And the defense, powered by Charles Haley and Ken Norton Jr., was fast, physical, and suffocating. They finished the regular season with the number one ranked defense in both yards and points allowed, then blew out the Eagles and stunned the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, handing San Francisco their first home playoff loss in a decade. Then came Super Bowl 27, where Dallas crushed the Buffalo Bills 52-17. They forced 9 turnovers, including 2 defensive touchdowns, and announced to the world that a new superpower had arrived. This was the Cowboys' most complete team. It wasn't just about winning, it was about launching a run that would define the entire 1990s. And it all started with 1992. Denver Broncos, 1998, 14-2. This wasn't just the Broncos' best season, it was the perfect ending to a Hall of Fame career. In 1998, Denver went 14-2, led by a 38-year-old John Elway and a prime Terrell Davis, who rushed for 2,008 yards and won NFL MVP. The offense was balanced, explosive, and perfectly orchestrated by head coach Mike Shanahan. With Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey, and Shannon Sharpe in the passing game, the Broncos could beat defenses in every way imaginable. They started the season 13-0, bulldozing opponents with an offense that averaged nearly 31 points per game. The defense, led by Steve Atwater and Bill Romanowski, played fast and physical, giving them just enough edge to control the tempo on both sides. In the playoffs, they cruised past the Dolphins and Jets, then faced the Atlanta Falcons in Super Bowl 33, coached by Elway's former boss, Dan Reeves. Denver dominated, winning 34-19, with Elway throwing for 336 yards and rushing for a touchdown in his final NFL game. He walked off the field a champion, again, and this time there was no more debate. The 1998 Broncos weren't just better than their 1997 title team. They were the most complete team in franchise history, and they gave Elway the fairy tale ending he earned. Detroit Lions, 2023, 12-5. This wasn't just the Lions' best season of the Super Bowl era. It was the most meaningful in franchise history. In 2023, Detroit went 12-5, won the NFC North for the first time ever, and hosted their first home playoff game since 1993. But this team wasn't about breaking curses. It was about rewriting the narrative. Led by Dan Campbell, The Lions were fearless, physical, and unapologetically aggressive. Jared Goff played the best football of his career. Amon-Ra St. Brown became a star, and rookie Jahmyr Gibbs gave the offense explosive versatility. Behind one of the league's best offensive lines, Detroit controlled games from the trenches. On defense, Aiden Hutchinson emerged as a dominant force, and the unit got stronger as the season went on. In the playoffs, the Lions beat the Rams in a highly emotional wild-card win, their first postseason victory since 1991. Then, they took down the Buccaneers to reach the NFC Championship game, where they jumped out to a shocking 24-7 halftime lead. Over the 49ers, it looked like destiny, until it wasn't. San Francisco stormed back in the second half, and the Lions fell just short of the Super Bowl, but the impact was already felt. 2023 wasn't just a great season, it was a cultural reset. The Lions became a national story, a team fans believed in, and proof that decades of losing can be undone in one unforgettable year. Green Bay Packers, 2010, 10, and 6. This wasn't their most dominant regular season, but it's the year they ran the table when it mattered most. In 2010, the Packers went 10 and 6, barely squeaked into the playoffs as the 6th seed, and then did the unthinkable, won 3 straight road playoff games, and hoisted the Lombardi Trophy on the biggest stage. It all started with Aaron Rodgers, who was in complete command of the offense. He threw for over 3,900 yards and 28 touchdowns in the regular season, but he turned it up another level in the postseason. He carved up defenses with pinpoint accuracy, mobility, and poise, including a near-perfect performance against the Falcons in the divisional round. The defense, led by Clay Matthews, Charles Woodson, and B.J. Raji, was opportunistic and physical, forcing turnovers, generating pressure, and getting key stops when needed. In Super Bowl 45, the Packers faced the Pittsburgh Steelers and jumped out to a 21-3 lead. The game tightened late, but Rodgers stayed calm, throwing for 304 yards and 3 touchdowns to earn Super Bowl MVP honors and deliver Green Bay's 4th Super Bowl title. It wasn't a 13-win juggernaut. It was a team that got healthy, hot, and locked in at the perfect time. The 2010 Packers showed that sometimes the best season isn't the cleanest. It's the one where you finish the job. Houston Texans, 2011, 10 and 6. This was the season the Texans finally broke through. In 2011, Houston went 10 and 6 and made the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. After years of mediocrity and near misses, they put together a complete team with a dominant ground game, a rising defense, and just enough resilience to survive major setbacks. They lost starting quarterback Matt Schaub to injury midseason, then lost backup Matt Leinart, but third-stringer TJ Yates stepped in and kept the team afloat, leaning on the Texans' biggest strength, Arian Foster and Ben Tate, who combined for over 2,100 rushing yards. On defense, new coordinator Wade Phillips completely transformed the unit. J.J. Watt was a rookie. Brian Cushing, Connor Barwin, and Antonio Smith made up one of the NFL's toughest front sevens. They finished the season ranked 2nd in total defense. In the playoffs, the Texans beat the Bengals in the wild card round, with Watt returning an interception for a touchdown in one of the franchise's most iconic moments. They nearly pulled off an upset against the Ravens in the divisional round, but came up just short. Still, 2011 marked a turning point. It was the first time the Texans weren't just in the league, they were part of the conversation. And even though later teams won more games, this was the season that changed everything. Indianapolis Colts, 2006, 12 and 4. This wasn't Peyton Manning's flashiest season, but it was the one that finally silenced every doubt. In 2006, the Colts went 12 and 4 behind Manning's precision passing, Marvin Harrison's route running mastery, and Reggie Wayne's big play ability. Joseph Adai gave them a strong running presence, and the offense finished top 3 in scoring yet again. But for years, the knock on the Colts was the same. Can they win in January? They had lost heartbreaking playoff games to New England and Pittsburgh in the years prior, and 2006 felt like their window might be closing. Then, everything changed. Despite struggling against the run during the regular season, the Colts' defense, led by Bob Sanders, Dwight Freeney, and Robert Mathis, flipped the switch in the playoffs. They shut down Larry Johnson in the wild card round, picked off Steve McNair in the divisional, and then faced the ultimate test, Tom Brady and the Patriots in the AFC Championship. Down 21-3, Manning led the biggest comeback of his career, finishing with 349 yards and a trip to the Super Bowl. 2 weeks later, they defeated the Chicago Bears 29-17 in Super Bowl 41, giving Indianapolis its first championship since the Baltimore days, and giving Manning the validation his career needed. 2006 wasn't their most dominant team, but it was the year they finally finished the job. Jacksonville Jaguars, 1999, 14-2. This was the most talented and well-rounded team the Jaguars have ever put on the field, and the closest they've ever come to a Super Bowl. In 1999, Jacksonville went 14-2, earning the best record in the NFL and the top seed in the AFC. Mark Brunell led the offense with poise. Jimmy Smith and Keenan McCardle formed one of the league's most underrated receiving duos, and Fred Taylor was in his prime, explosive, physical, and unstoppable when healthy. But the real surprise came on defense. The Jags finished with the number 4 defense in the league, thanks to impact players like Tony Brackens, Donovan Darius, and Kevin Hardy. They held opponents to just 13 points per game, forced turnovers at a high rate, and dominated time of possession. After beating the Dolphins 62-7 in the divisional round, the final game of Dan Marino's career, the Jaguars were 1 win away from the Super Bowl. But there was one problem: the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee had already handed Jacksonville its only 2 losses during the regular season, and in the AFC Championship, they did it again. The Jags led 14-10 at halftime, but the Titans outscored them 23-0 in the second half and ended Jacksonville's dream season. It was the most complete team in franchise history, and one of the best NFL teams to never reach a Super Bowl. 1999 was as close as they've ever come. Kansas City Chiefs, 2019, 12-4. This was the year the Chiefs finally broke through and started building a modern dynasty. In 2019, Kansas City went 12-4, led by Patrick Mahomes in his second season as a starter. While Mahomes' numbers dipped slightly from his MVP campaign the year before, he was smarter, more efficient, and more dangerous when it mattered most. But it wasn't just him. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Mecole Hardman gave Mahomes a track team at receiver. Damian Williams added burst to the backfield, and the defense under new coordinator Steve Spagnuolo finally turned the corner, with Tyrann Mathieu, Chris Jones, and Frank Clark stepping up in the postseason. After falling behind 24-0 to the Texans in the divisional round, the Chiefs exploded for 51 points, erasing the deficit in a single quarter. They followed that up with a comeback win over the Titans in the AFC Championship, earning their first trip to the Super Bowl in 50 years. In Super Bowl 54, they faced the 49ers and entered the fourth quarter down 20-10. But Mahomes delivered, engineering 3 straight touchdown drives to win 31-20 and capture Kansas City's first Lombardi trophy since 1970. It wasn't just about winning a title. It was about changing the identity of the franchise. 2019 made the Chiefs a destination, Mahomes a legend, and Kansas City a threat for years to come. Las Vegas Raiders, 1983, 12-4. Then known as the Los Angeles Raiders. This was the most dominant team in franchise history, and the last time the Raiders reached the NFL mountaintop. In 1983, the Raiders went 12-4 and steamrolled their way to a Super Bowl 18 title. Led by head coach Tom Flores, this team had everything: physicality, speed, attitude, and one of the best playoff runs the league had ever seen. Quarterback Jim Plunkett managed the game with poise, while Marcus Allen gave them a true superstar. Allen rushed for over 1,700 total yards that season, then delivered one of the greatest performances in Super Bowl history, including his legendary 74-yard touchdown run, where he reversed field and outran the entire Washington defense. On defense, the Raiders were violent and opportunistic. Howie Long, Lyle Alzado, and Matt Millen anchored a unit that played fast and mean. They forced turnovers, controlled the line of scrimmage, and set the tone every Sunday. In the Super Bowl, they dismantled the defending champion Washington Redskins 38-9, holding an offense that had scored a then-record 541 points in the regular season to just one touchdown. The 1983 Raiders didn't sneak into a title. They earned it, with power, speed, and swagger that defined an era. It remains the last time the franchise won it all, and still stands as the peak of Raider greatness. Los Angeles Chargers, 1994, 11-5. Then known as the San Diego Chargers. This was the Chargers' breakthrough season, and the only time they've ever reached the Super Bowl. In 1994, San Diego went 11-5 under head coach Bobby Ross, led by a scrappy, overachieving roster that played tough, physical football. Quarterback Stan Humphries managed the offense efficiently, while running back Natrone Means powered his way to over 1,300 rushing yards, giving the team its offensive identity. But it was the defense and special teams that made this team dangerous. Linebacker Junior Seau was the heart and soul of the franchise, flying around the field, making clutch plays, and setting the tone with unmatched energy and leadership. The Chargers didn't blow teams out. They wore them down. In the playoffs, they edged out the Dolphins and then stunned the Steelers in the AFC Championship, holding strong at the goal line in the final seconds to secure a 17-13 victory. It sent San Diego to Super Bowl 29, the first in franchise history. There, they ran into a buzzsaw, the 49ers at their peak. Steve Young threw 6 touchdown passes, and the Chargers lost 49-26. But the 1994 season still stands as the high watermark for the franchise. It was gritty, it was gutsy, and it proved that San Diego could hang with the league's best. No Chargers team has gone further, or meant more to the city. Los Angeles Rams, 1999, 13-3. This wasn't just the Rams' best season. It was the birth of the greatest show on turf. In 1999, the Rams went 13-3 and shocked the league with an offense that looked like it came from the future. They were fast, aggressive, and relentless, scoring 526 points, the most in the NFL that year. And it all started with a backup quarterback no one saw coming. Kurt Warner, a former grocery store stalker and Arena League standout, stepped in after an injury to Trent Green, and immediately became a star. He threw for 41 touchdowns and won NFL MVP, running head coach Dick Vermeil's high-flying offense to perfection. With Marshall Faulk in the backfield, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, and Az-Zahir Hakim at receiver, the Rams could score in seconds, and often did. On defense, they were underrated. Led by Kevin Carter, London Fletcher, and Todd Light, they forced turnovers and pressured quarterbacks, giving Warner and company even more chances to light up the scoreboard. In Super Bowl 34, they faced the upstart Titans. The Rams built a 16-0 lead, but Tennessee came storming back. With the game tied 16-16 and the clock winding down, Warner hit Bruce for a 73-yard touchdown. Then, on the final play, linebacker Mike Jones made one of the most iconic tackles in NFL history, stopping Kevin Dyson 1 yard short of the end zone. The Rams won 23-16 and finished one of the most exciting and explosive seasons the league had ever seen. 1999 wasn't just the Rams' best season. It changed what we thought an offense could be. Miami Dolphins, 1972, 14-0. This isn't just the Dolphins' best season, it's the only perfect season in NFL history. In 1972, Miami went 14-0 in the regular season, then won 3 straight playoff games, including Super Bowl VII, to finish 17-0, a record no team has ever matched. What made it so remarkable was how complete and how balanced they were. The offense, led by Bob Grease and Earl Morrall, didn't light up the stat sheet, but it didn't have to. The backfield tandem of Larry Csonka, Mercury Morris, and Jim Keough formed a 3-headed rushing attack that wore down defenses and controlled the clock. But the real identity of the team was its defense, famously nicknamed the no-name defense. They didn't have a ton of stars, but they had cohesion, discipline, and a head coach in Don Shula who knew exactly how to maximize every unit. The Dolphins beat Washington 14-7 in Super Bowl VII, sealing the perfect season. The only blemish? A missed field goal that prevented a shutout. Other teams have come close. The 2007 Patriots went 18-0 before losing in the Super Bowl, but none have finished the job. That's why the 1972 Dolphins aren't just the best team in franchise history. They're one of the most iconic teams in all of football. Minnesota Vikings, 1998, 15-1. This was the most explosive team the Vikings have ever fielded, and one of the greatest offenses the NFL has ever seen. In 1998, Minnesota went 15-1, set a then NFL record with 556 points, and made it look easy. Veteran quarterback Randall Cunningham had a career renaissance, throwing for 34 touchdowns, while Robert Smith added over 1,000 yards on the ground. But the real spark came from a rookie, Randy Moss. With unmatched speed, size, and deep ball ability, Moss exploded for 1,313 yards and 17 touchdowns, stretching defenses and opening everything underneath for Chris Carter and tight end Jake Reed. No team had answers. Every week, Minnesota ran up the score and didn't slow down. Defensively, they were sound too, with John Randall anchoring the pass rush and Ed McDaniel leading the linebacking core. They had playmakers at every level. They cruised through the regular season, dismantled the Cardinals in the divisional round, and hosted the NFC Championship against the Atlanta Falcons. Late in the game, up 27-20, kicker Gary Anderson, who hadn't missed a single kick all year, missed a 38-yard field goal that would have iced it. The Falcons tied it, sent it to overtime, and won. Just like that, the Vikings' dream season ended one game short of the Super Bowl. 1998 wasn't just their best shot, it was lightning in a bottle. A perfect storm of talent, play calling, and dominance. That just didn't finish. New England Patriots, 2007, 16-0. This was the most dominant regular season in NFL history, and the closest any team has come to perfection since the 1972 Dolphins. In 2007, the Patriots went 16-0, becoming the first team to complete a perfect regular season in the 16-game era. They didn't just win, they overwhelmed. Their average margin of victory was nearly 20 points per game, and at times, it felt like they were playing a different sport. Tom Brady was in full command, throwing a then-record 50 touchdown passes, with 23 of them going to Randy Moss, who had just arrived in New England and instantly became uncoverable. The offense, with Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth, and Lawrence Maroney, was the most efficient in the league. On defense, they were loaded with veterans like Teddy Bruschi, Asante Samuel, Vince Wilfork, and Rodney Harrison. They didn't bend, they didn't break, they just suffocated teams and gave the ball back to Brady. They blew through the playoffs, beating the Jaguars and Chargers to reach Super Bowl 42, where they were heavy favorites against the New York Giants. Then, the unthinkable happened. The Giants pressured Brady all night, and with less than 3 minutes left, Eli Manning escaped a sack and hit David Tyree for the now famous helmet catch. The Giants scored the go-ahead touchdown soon after, and New England's perfect season was gone, just 35 seconds from immortality. It ended in heartbreak. But the 2007 Patriots remain the most feared, unstoppable version of the franchise, and arguably the greatest team to never win it all. New Orleans Saints, 2009, 13-3. This wasn't just the Saints' best season, it was the year they rewrote their legacy. In 2009, New Orleans went 13-3, powered by the league's most dynamic offense and a defense that finally knew how to close games. Drew Brees was at his absolute peak, throwing for 4,388 yards and 34 touchdowns, leading an attack that averaged 31.9 points per game, best in the NFL. Brees had weapons everywhere. Marquez Colston, Devery Henderson, Robert Meekum, and Reggie Bush, with Pierre Thomas balancing out the backfield. Head coach Sean Payton called the shots with fearless creativity, going for it on fourth down, dialing up trick plays, and keeping defenses off balance. But the biggest difference was the defense. Under new coordinator Greg Williams, the Saints forced a league-high 39 turnovers, led by Darren Sharper's 9 interceptions. It wasn't a lockdown unit. It was opportunistic, aggressive, and timely. They started the season 13-0, then rested starters after locking up the number 1 seed. In the playoffs, they crushed the Cardinals and survived an overtime thriller against the Vikings to reach Super Bowl 44. There, they faced the Colts and Peyton Manning. After falling behind early, the Saints swung momentum with a surprise onside kick to start the second half. A gutsy, unforgettable call. Breeze threw 2 second-half touchdowns, and Tracy Porter's pick 6 sealed the deal. Final score, 31-17. Saints win their first Super Bowl. In a city still recovering from Hurricane Katrina, this team meant everything. 2009 wasn't just a championship. It was redemption, joy, and history. New York Giants, 2007, 10-6. This wasn't their most dominant team. It wasn't their highest seed. But it was the most unforgettable season in Giants history, and maybe the greatest underdog run the NFL has ever seen. In 2007, the Giants went 10-6, finishing second in the NFC East. They weren't flashy, they weren't perfect, but they were built for the road and built for the moment. Led by Eli Manning, who had been doubted for years, and a relentless pass rush powered by Michael Strahan, Osi Umenyiora, and Justin Tuck, the Giants got hot at the perfect time. They won 3 straight road games in the playoffs, in Tampa, in Dallas, and in Green Bay, to reach Super Bowl 42 against the undefeated 18-0 New England Patriots. No one gave them a chance, but the Giants' defense smothered Brady all night, and Eli, known for his calm demeanor, delivered one of the most iconic drives in football history. And 3rd and 5, he escaped a near sack, rolled out, and launched a pass that David Tyree pinned against his helmet for a miraculous first down. A few plays later, Plaxico Burress caught the game-winning touchdown with 35 seconds left. Final score, 17-14. The perfect Patriots were no more. The Giants were Super Bowl champions. It was gritty, improbable, and absolutely legendary. 2007 will always be remembered as the year David toppled Goliath, and the Giants pulled off the upset of the century. New York Jets, 1968, 11-3. This wasn't just the Jets' best season, it was the most important win in AFL history. In 1968, the Jets went 11-3, led by charismatic quarterback Joe Namath, the swagger of head coach Weeb Ewbank, and a team built to challenge the NFL's dominance in the final years before the AFL-NFL merger. Namath threw for over 3,000 yards, unheard of at the time, while Don Maynard and George Sauer stretched defenses deep, and Matt Snell gave them a power run game. The defense, led by Larry Grantham, Verlin Biggs, and Jerry Philbin, was aggressive and disciplined. The Jets won the AFL championship by beating the Oakland Raiders, then entered Super Bowl III as massive underdogs, facing the 13-1 Baltimore Colts, who were widely expected to blow them out. Then came Namath's guarantee. He boldly told the media the Jets would win, and he backed it up. The Jets controlled the game from start to finish, with Snell rushing for 121 yards and the defense forcing 5 turnovers. Namath managed the clock, avoided mistakes, and let the defense do the rest. Final score, Jets 16, Colts 7. It was the first time an AFL team had won the Super Bowl, and it validated the merger before it even happened. For the Jets, it remains their only Super Bowl appearance and only championship since the AFL-NFL merger. 1968 wasn't just a great season. It was the year the Jets made history and changed football forever. Philadelphia Eagles, 2017, 13-3. This wasn't just the Eagles' best season. It was the one that finally brought a Lombardi trophy to Philadelphia. In 2017, the Eagles went 13-3 under second-year head coach Doug Peterson, with Carson Wentz playing like an MVP and the team dominating in the trenches. They had the number 3 scoring offense, a top 5 defense, and one of the deepest rosters in the league. Wentz threw 33 touchdowns in just 13 games, but his season ended early with a torn ACL in Week 14. Many thought Philly's Super Bowl hopes were finished, but backup quarterback Nick Foles stepped in and became a legend. The Eagles embraced the underdog role, wearing dog masks, feeding off doubt, and knocking off the Falcons and Vikings in the playoffs, including a 38-7 blowout in the NFC Championship game. Then came Super Bowl 52, a shootout against the defending champion Patriots and Tom Brady. Foles was fearless. He threw for 373 yards and 3 touchdowns, even caught a touchdown himself on the now iconic Philly Special. The game went down to the wire, but the Eagles held on for a 41-33 victory, winning their first Super Bowl in franchise history. It wasn't just a title, it was a statement. to the league, to the fans, and to the city. 2017 turned doubt into belief and backup into folklore. It's a season Eagles fans will never forget. Pittsburgh Steelers, 1978, 14-2. This was the most complete team in Steelers history and the peak of the Steel Curtain dynasty. In 1978, Pittsburgh went 14-2, the best record of the Chuck Noll era. By this point, they had already won 2 Super Bowls, but the 78 team took things to a different level, pairing their legendary defense with a newly unleashed offense. Quarterback Terry Bradshaw had his best season, throwing for over 2,900 yards and 28 touchdowns, en route to winning NFL MVP. Lynn Swann and John Stallworth gave him 2 elite targets, and Franco Harris remained the engine of the ground game. But the heart of the team was still its defense, the Steel Curtain. With Mean Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Mel Blount, and Jack Ham, Pittsburgh led the league in interceptions and ranked top 5 in every major defensive category. They hit hard, played fast, and intimidated everyone in their path. They cruised through the playoffs, defeating the Broncos and Oilers, and then faced the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl XIII, a rematch of their 1976 showdown. Bradshaw threw 4 touchdown passes, including 2 to Swann, and the Steelers won 35-31 in a game that was closer on the scoreboard than it was on the field. It was their 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years, and the one that truly cemented them as the team of the decade. 1978 wasn't just Pittsburgh's best team. It was the version where everything came together: offense, defense, and legacy. San Francisco 49ers, 1989, 14-2. This was the most dominant version of one of the NFL's most iconic dynasties. In 1989, the 49ers went 14-2 under first-year head coach George Seifert, but the foundation was already in place, built by Bill Walsh, led by Joe Montana, and executed to near perfection. Montana had his best season, throwing for 3,521 yards, 26 touchdowns, and just 8 interceptions. He won NFL MVP, running the West Coast offense with surgical precision. His connection with Jerry Rice, who had over 1,400 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns, was unstoppable. Roger Craig added over 1,500 scrimmage yards, and the offensive line gave Montana all day to throw. But what made the '89 team special was the defense. With stars like Charles Haley, Ronnie Lott, and Keena Turner, the 49ers finished top 5 in scoring defense. They didn't just bend and not break, they suffocated. In the playoffs, they crushed the Vikings and Rams by a combined 62-12, then faced John Elway and the Broncos in Super Bowl XXIV. What followed was the biggest blowout in Super Bowl history. Montana threw 5 touchdown passes, and the 49ers won 55-10. A flawless 60-minute masterpiece that left no doubt. They became the first team to win 4 Super Bowls with the same quarterback, and the 1989 version was the most complete, most balanced, and most dominant of them all. Seattle Seahawks, 2013, 13-3. This was the year the Seahawks went from rising contender to full-blown powerhouse and delivered one of the most dominant Super Bowl performances of all time. In 2013, Seattle went 13-3, powered by the league's #1 defense, a relentless ground game, and the poise of second-year quarterback Russell Wilson. On offense, they didn't overwhelm with stats. They controlled the clock, made big plays when needed, and let the defense take care of the rest. Marshawn Lynch ran for over 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns, bringing a physical, punishing style that wore defenses down. And Wilson, mature beyond his years, threw 26 touchdowns with just 9 interceptions, delivering clutch throws week after week. But the heart of this team was the Legion of Boom. With Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, and Byron Maxwell, the Seahawks secondary shut down elite receivers and punished anyone who came across the middle. The defense forced 39 turnovers, allowed the fewest points and yards in the league, and suffocated opposing quarterbacks with a fierce pass rush led by Michael Bennett and Cliff Avril. In the playoffs, Seattle took down Drew Brees and the Saints, then beat the 49ers in an unforgettable NFC championship, sealed by Sherman's deflection in the end zone. Then came Super Bowl 48. Facing Peyton Manning's record-breaking Broncos offense, Seattle didn't just win, they annihilated them. From the opening safety to the final whistle, it was a 43-8 blowout that showcased one of the most complete teams ever assembled. 2013 wasn't just the Seahawks' best season. It was a blueprint for dominance, built on speed, swagger, and suffocating defense. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2020, 11-5. This wasn't just Tampa Bay's best season, it was the most transformative in franchise history. In 2020, the Buccaneers went 11-5, ending a 13-year playoff drought in their first season with Tom Brady under center. At 43 years old, Brady brought not just elite quarterback play, but a championship mentality, and immediately turned the Bucs into contenders. The offense was loaded. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski gave Brady endless weapons. Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones anchored the ground game. And behind one of the NFL's best offensive lines, Brady threw for over 4,600 yards and 40 touchdowns. But it was the defense that quietly made the difference. Led by Devin White, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, and Jason Pierre-Paul, the Bucs finished top 5 against the run, dominated the trenches, and got hot at the right time. Tampa Bay won 3 straight road games in the playoffs, beating Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and the top-seeded Packers, to reach Super Bowl 55, hosted in their own stadium. There, they faced the defending champion Chiefs and dismantled them. The Bucs pressured Mahomes 29 times, sacked him 3 times, and didn't allow a single touchdown. Brady threw 3 first-half touchdowns and controlled the game start to finish in a 31-9 win, earning his 7th Super Bowl ring, and Tampa Bay's 2nd in franchise history. 2020 wasn't just a title run, it was the year the Buccaneers went from afterthought to champions. Tennessee Titans, 1999, 13-3. First season as the Tennessee Titans. This was the franchise's first year with a new name, a new stadium, and a team that came just 1 yard short of immortality. In 1999, the Titans went 13-3 under head coach Jeff Fisher, with a physical, punishing identity on both sides of the ball. Steve McNair was tough and poised, while Eddie George carried the offense with over 1,500 total yards, running behind a dominant offensive line. Defensively, Tennessee was fast, nasty, and opportunistic, with playmakers like Jevin Kearse, a rookie who racked up 14.5 sacks, earning the nickname The Freak. The Titans finished top 5 in scoring defense and suffocated teams with relentless pressure. But the magic came in the playoffs. In the wild card round, they pulled off the legendary Music City Miracle, a last-second cross-field lateral touchdown, returned to beat the Bills 22-16. That moment sparked a run that continued through the Colts and Jaguars, propelling the Titans to Super Bowl 34 against the high-powered St. Louis Rams. The game came down to the final play. With 6 seconds left and the Titans trailing 23-16, McNair hit Kevin Dyson on a slant, and he raced toward the goal line. But Rams linebacker Mike Jones tackled him at the 1 yard line. Time expired. The Titans were 1 yard short of tying the game. It was heartbreak. But it was also the greatest season in franchise history. 1999 wasn't just about a near title. It was about grit, belief, and a team that left everything on the field. Washington Commanders, 1991, 14-2. This wasn't just Washington's best team. It's one of the most underrated championship squads in NFL history. In 1991, Washington went 14-2 under legendary head coach Joe Gibbs, dominating opponents with ruthless efficiency on both sides of the ball. They outscored teams by 261 points, led the NFL in scoring, and trailed for fewer minutes than any team in modern league history. Quarterback Mark Rypien threw for over 3,500 yards and 28 touchdowns, connecting with Art Monk, Gary Clark, and Ricky Sanders, the trio known as the Posse. Running back Ernest Biner provided balance, and the offensive line, the Hogs, gave Rypien all the time he needed. Defensively, they were just as good. Led by Darrell Green, Wilbur Marshall, and Charles Mann, Washington finished top 5 in scoring defense and created turnovers in bunches. They started the season 11-0, finished 14-2, and cruised through the playoffs, blowing out the Falcons and crushing the Lions 41-10 in the NFC Championship. In Super Bowl 26, they overwhelmed the Buffalo Bills 37-24, with Ripien earning MVP honors. Washington didn't just win, they dominated from week 1 to the final whistle. No drama, no missed kicks, no miracle drives, just pure, complete football. 1991 was the franchise at its absolute peak. A team so good, it often gets forgotten, because it made winning look easy. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed. Thanks for watching.